And we're back. This is the Colombia Calling podcast. I'm Richard Mccoll here in Bogota, Colombia, 2,600 meters closer to the stars. And our very special guest this week, episode 544. He's been here a long time. He's one part of the brains behind a huge brand that everybody coming to Colombia should know. And we'll talk further about their expansion internationally. But he's never been on the podcast before. 544 episodes later, we've got Travis Crockett on the line from Cartagena. Welcome on the Colombia Calling podcast.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, amazing that all of this time we've known each other for over 10 years. But no, at least we're getting an opportunity now to have a chat.
Well, it's a good peg. We've got a good plug because this goes out on a Tuesday and it's going out the Tuesday that you are launching Gringo Tuesdays in Cartagena. Gringo Tuesdays, for anyone who doesn't know, is a language exchange / nightclub / cultural event / cultural phenomenon that began in 2011 in Bogota, expanded through Medellin, Cali, and on to Cartagena, and has had international expansion into Lima and attempts into Panama. But Travis, let's start from the very beginning, because the last time I spoke about Gringo Tuesdays on the Colombia Calling podcast was episode 10, August the 12th, 2013, with Tiffany, who is, I guess, a silent partner still. And Tiffany's from the US, you're from Australia. Just tell us, give us the background of Gringo Tuesdays, how it came about.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think the beginnings was probably a long time ago, back in about 2006. My brother was playing tennis and traveling in different parts of the world as a semi-professional tennis player. Yeah. And he was at a party that I was hosting in Australia, and there was a bunch of Mexican people there, and he immediately gravitated towards them because he'd just been in Latin America, and was like, oh, I can go and practice my Spanish. And nobody in our family had ever even attempted to speak a second language. I mean, we did a little bit at school and stuff, but nobody had really had a crack at it. And I heard him speaking what I felt like was pretty fluent Spanish, and was just shocked that he'd only been in Cuba for like a month. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing phenomenon that you've been able to just pick up the lingo and then, go and practice it with a bunch of people. So I think that's where it kind of was the first thing that kind of impacted me about the ability to communicate with other people if you just, have a go and practice in a sort of a social environment. So and then I think the other thing that happened to me on my journey or my travels when I was in Turkey in 2009, when I went to a couch surfing language exchange. And it was a strange experience because it was completely disorganized. Nobody knew what was going on. It was just an invite online, and I thought, I'll go and meet these people and see what happens. And yeah, I just spent the whole time sort of picking apart what they'd done wrong, and maybe they should have done this and that. And I remember getting stuck with a bill because everybody left. Nobody had, there wasn't a split bill. So, the venue had no idea what was going on. And I ended up having to pay for everybody with another 3 or 4 other guests, and thought, what a missed opportunity for the venue. And then I was in Colombia in 2009, and I was in the process of opening a hostel with my current still business partner, three of us that started Gringo Tuesdays, Alex Owen from Wales, and we were starting a hostel, and we had a plan to have a bar at the front part of the hostel, and it was in La Candelaria. You also know Bogota really well, and there's a bunch of university students down there that wander around the streets, and I thought, well, maybe I could try this language exchange thing and just get these people to come into the front bar and maybe just interact with our customers, which will all be foreigners. And I think that's where the whole idea of doing multiple languages started, where I was like, this could be really fantastic opportunity for not just English and Spanish, but we can add French and German and Italian and Portuguese. And it would be a really great opportunity to recreate that kind of hostel experience that I'd had, where you could just interact with anybody, and there was no sort of barrier to you just walking up to somebody in a hostel and sitting at a table and speaking to them. And there was always a bunch of people from different parts of the world. And I thought, that'd be fantastic if we could sort of recreate that opportunity for people who are traveling, but also for students who are potentially trying to learn a second language.
What was your hostel?
So yeah,
what was your hostel?
Which
one?
It was called Home Hostel, but we never opened it. It was a dream. We had a contract on it, but I now have one in Cali called Oasis. But yeah, the at the time there really wasn't any sort of interaction like that, and we would get stopped on the street often by people who just like want to talk to us. This is back in 2009, so people just come up to you on the street and say, "Can I practice English with you?" So I just thought, well, there's something that there's a real need for people, and if they're prepared to just walk up to some random gringo on the street, then there's definitely a market for it. If we create a space. And in 2010 we started La Via, which is a nightclub in the Zona Rosa. Was a nightclub in the Zona Rosa, which was quite famous in its day. And when we started the nightclub, I thought, well, maybe here's the opportunity. Like, we could start this event. And I spoke to the business partners about Tuesday nights. It was a strange phenomenon in Bogota where there was a gringo hangout every night of the week. So it was somewhere that everybody kind of went. If you were unemployed like me at the time. And so I managed to convince them to let me use the bar on Tuesday nights to do my crazy idea. And we just started doing the language exchange, and then obviously turned it into a party afterwards, which is when I met Tiff. And I was doing some sort of strange novella. I was acting in inverted commas. And Tiff managed to Shanghai me. One of her many things that she used to do as an agent for foreigners to get them work doing commercials and all sorts of stuff. So I was one of her actors. Terrible at it, but I got a few gigs, and I met Tiffany through that, and she obviously had a really fantastic connection to the foreigner expat community. She was previously an ambassador for Internations in Bogota, and she had this fantastic network of people. So that's where we started to collaborate, myself, Alex, and Tiff, and opened the event in 2011.
What's amazing is when you think about that, is because you were sort of plugged into the traveler backpacker circuit, and she came in at a different level as well. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but if she's with Internations, that goes to sort of multinationals and other things. And of course, as an agent, then you're both plugging into really key elements in order to make Gringo Tuesdays a success. And I remember talking to, do you remember, you must know Oscar Payan from Hostel Sway. He just didn't think that a Tuesday night would take off at all. I remember him saying to me quite openly, I just don't see this, I don't see that. And I was like, well, give it a chance. Give it a chance. I'll admit to having only been to one, because a buddy of mine, Carl Meek, who's back and forth between here and the UK, he said, like, just come for a drink. He goes, I'm married, you're in a relationship, but come for a drink to take a look. And what amazed me was that obviously it was, your efforts were polished. Every element of it had been thought through. There was clear trial and error. But every piece from the language element to then the party, and then the amazing amount of publicity you guys generated. You have your marketing department. You had a professional photographer there, I think, taking photographs, because Facebook used to be, it was wall to wall pictures of people having a great time, and this was key. Because it was before, let's say, the decline in Facebook, and everyone saw it.
I'm one of those people now that I still occasionally log into Facebook, and people are like, wow, you must be really old if you're still using
well, I don't know how old you are, but it's my generation definitely, which still used as a kind of again a conduit for messaging and so on.
Yeah. So the marketing department was just me back then, and I used to go down the Recalde and like talk some graphic designer into designing these posters, things that I could put in the hostels. And back in the day, I used to go to university campuses and hand out like tickets for free beers and things like that to students. And it was a difficult sell when we started because I don't think people really understood what it was. But the whole concept for me was really just about inviting people to interact in a social environment. And this whole idea of learning a language somewhat passively, or at least mirroring the way that people learn languages when they move overseas, which is immersion basically, is what I tried to create with Gringo Tuesdays, because I felt like, I learned Spanish that way, interacting with other people and traveling and all those sorts of things. And I thought, well, I'm not that bright and I was never very good at languages, and I managed to pick the language up. So, other people can do it as well. That was, and I think the other thing you mentioned was interesting is the combination between the people that I knew, like my friends from footy and a different expat crowd and sort of backpackers and those types of people. And then Tiffany was really, talking to CEOs of multinational companies and stuff like that. So we had like this really interesting group of people that would come together. And that was the other thing that Gringo Tuesday sort of embodied when we first started. Was it was an opportunity for people to meet that were from different walks of life, that perhaps in other circumstances wouldn't have had anything in common or any reason to meet each other. And, you could see a CEO of a company sitting next to an 18-year-old student from the Nacional and, practicing English and talking all about stuff. And you think, wow, this is a fantastic environment that we've created where we've broken down a bunch of social barriers and giving people an opportunity to really meet people that are from different walks of life completely.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You're very self-deprecating in that. As you say, you're not intelligent. You're not book intelligent, but you are certainly intelligent on the ground and hands-on. So let's get that out there. And I think that was obviously is going to make this connection between the different levels makes it a success. Because if one day that maybe, I don't know, let's say there's a football match on or something, and so one section of the society doesn't turn up, but you're still getting another section of society. You cast the net wide, but it works. And again, you're very on message, and you're talking about the language side of things, the success side of things. But I will recall in 2011 what I said to Tiffany. I didn't listen back. I've just remembered this conversation all those years ago, because is that I likened the party side, because I didn't go to the language exchange, but I likened the party side for the one time I went to something similar in London. It was called Strawberry Moon, and it was we knew that all like American students would go there, and all they wanted to do was meet English guys. So we would turn up and pretend to be Hugh Grant. So let's get out there. It's like, because it did become it was obviously a place for girls to meet boys and boys to meet girls, and likewise it was famous. It was really famous. But nicely, I know that there are stories of success. I know that there's stories of people getting married having met at Gringo Tuesdays.
I get invited to a lot of weddings that have results of Gringo Tuesdays. I mean, I never really apologized for it. We did get cop a bit of flack actually from different sectors about, it's just a Gringo pickup joint type thing. I mean, I think that's the way people meet people, and we did obviously have that as just part of the event. I think it's just a circumstance where you put a bunch of people in a room, and especially because, we knew that as well. There was always this fantastic interaction between foreigners and locals, Colombian girls that wanted to meet foreign guys and all that sort of stuff. So it was definitely something that we were massively famous for when we first started. And it was with some intent as well. We didn't think, this, look what happened. But it certainly was a way for people to meet people in an environment that was a lot safer than other options. Mm-hmm. And also there was a fantastic element of the language exchange where people actually got to talk to each other before the nightclub bit starts, where it's just a random dance floor. And, I think that was something that was a bit different as well in terms of that. But we definitely have a lot of stories of customers who've met at Gringo Tuesdays. I just went to a wedding recently, and this is 13 years later. Yeah, I know. So it's pretty fantastic.
I think this is really cool. I think I hadn't thought of that as like people could put the groundwork in and be charming and
Yeah.
flirtatious before the alcohol kicks in when you're a bore.
Well, I think that, and also it's a little bit more of an opportunity to get to know somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas, in a normal nightclub circumstance, it's all, it's aesthetic, really. It's just, I like the look of that one. But I think with, with the language exchange, you really got that opportunity to converse with somebody and get to know them a bit better. So yeah, I think for that reason, I think there's a lot of babies that are the results of Gringo Tuesdays as well. So we've gone full circle over 13 years.
So let's move on. When was it? Because I know there was an expansion. You wanted to move into the Candelaria quite soon in. It was like I was around 2013. I know it was 2013, 14, around then, and it was going to be called the Speakeasy, something or other.
Yeah,
I think I've still got
the Wednesday Speakeasy.
So you were going to try and get the same clientele from Tuesday to move over to Wednesday, but did it?
Well,
what happened?
Well, we tried to. Well, we picked the center because we didn't want to butcher the other event either. We sort of, had this sort of amazing event on Tuesdays. I mean, at the time, it was more of a thing where we couldn't let everybody in that wanted to go. Like we had a huge queue of like 2 blocks of people waiting to get in the door at Gringo Tuesdays. And so, that was our automatic thought was, well, we need another one of these because, this is ridiculous. All of these people standing out there with their money ready to pay and we can't let them in. So, we decided to do it in the center to give it that distance from the other event. So we didn't sort of, butcher the original event. And we looked at the different demographics of the people that were in the center. But yeah, part of the reason that didn't continue was that it was really difficult to create a nightclub event in the center, even though we had a fantastic venue like Candelario in the center.
Oh yeah.
There's an amazing phenomenon with the Transmillennial. So the students all have to go at before 11 o'clock and get on the Transmillennial. So if they live in the north, which a lot of the students that go to like the good universities down in the center, they don't live in the center. So we had this sort of mass exodus around 11 o'clock when everybody had to go and get on the Transmillennial, which is something we hadn't factored in. And it was never really a backpacker party. Like I know it got that kind of reputation, but we were always very conscious of involving the expat community and and making it interesting from that perspective, that it wasn't just a backpacker big night out. And so it was always it was always a little bit more difficult in the center. I'm sure you know yourself, it's hard to get down there from those people who live north of the 72.
And also, then you've got the point where around 2013 or prior to it, there was all that work going on and sort of blocking taxis. Taxis don't want to go down, security issues and so on. It's still a great place to go. It's a great place to go, great restaurants and cultural things. But I can understand. And imagine being held to mercy by the Transmillennial. I mean, imagine that. Yeah. So...
Well, it's one of those things you don't think of when you start a business. You're not like, oh, this will be affected by the timings of people having to get the bus.
I guess the same would have been like back London back in the day with the tube, stopping and pubs closing sort of just after the tube stop. So you're always looking around for a minicab. Where did you expand first? Was it Medellin that you expanded into first?
So that was post-pandemic. So when we
pandemic shut everything down, obviously.
Pandemic was a nightmare for us, obviously. Like, I mean, our whole business was getting 1,000 people in a small space. so it wasn't exactly conducive to the pandemic. We made an attempt during the pandemic to do it online, but we never really worked out how to monetize it. We just did it really to keep the continuity there with our customers in the case that we came back. And I think, it was absolutely fantastic to some degree because we had this loyal following and we had so many people join us on the online version, which I thought was going to be ridiculous because I was like, well, how are you going to do a party? Like, it's just, people doing this over a video thing. And so when we did a party where I put music on Spotify and put the lyrics on the screen so that people could like practice the lyrics in different languages. So all my customers to give me their favorite songs in French and their favorite songs in German and Portuguese. And we put them on the screen and everybody would dance around their living rooms during the pandemic, which sounds ridiculous, especially now that we've all been released. But yeah, at the time, people would do almost anything to keep themselves sane. So that was an interesting experience. And I moved down to Cali to look after a friend's hostel. And we just had, in my family, I had 2 kids, and we had both kids in private schools, and we had rent, and we had an office in Bogota that we had to get out of the lease on, and all these sorts of things. So yeah, it was a pretty stressful period for us as a family, but as a business, because we had to let go so many people and obviously pay people out and all these sorts of things. And it was a pretty difficult time. But yeah, when we started coming out of it, we started up again in Bogota first, which was an interesting period of time in that we were still masking, and there was still like the social distancing thing, and it was kind of weird because they were like, yeah, you can open your gastro bar again, but you got all of these rules and things like that. And I think there was a point where Tiffany and I sort of had a meeting, and we both sort of were like, maybe this will never go back to normal. Like, this could be the end of Gringo Tuesdays. But we invented this thing called bio pong, BIO pong, instead of beer pong.
Okay.
And it was so you had the beer pong table, and it's 2 meters long. So basically, there's your social distancing, and we had all the cups filled, not filled, but they had a little bit of alcohol in the bottom. So instead of chucking it into a beer, which beer pong's really a filthy game, but this version of it was very, very, very clean. So you actually chucked your ping pong ball into a cup full of 100% alcohol, so it cleaned the ball at the same time. So we invented a bunch of stuff that we thought, maybe we can do this, but doing a language exchange with a mask on is not great. It's a very difficult challenge. But once we got towards the point where we thought, okay, we could be open again, and people started coming back to Gringo Tuesdays, we're like, okay, we've been through the worst that we can ever go through. Let's just have a crack at this. Everybody's been asking us to do Medellin for years. Like, let's go. And so myself and Andres, it only took us about 3 weeks, actually. We went up to Medellin. I rented an apartment from an English friend of mine who was away in Europe doing tours. And we called it Gringo HQ. And we ran around Medellin, lining up all the people to come and doing all the stuff that we'd done in Bogota. And just fingers crossed, well, let's see if this thing works or not. And we had the nightclub, which is the same business that we use in Bogota, Vintrash, in Medellin, in the middle of Provenza. And so we're like, what do we got to lose? Let's just try it. And then, we started at the end of 2001, about September 2001.
I have this question because now if we just jump around a bit here. Bogota, Medellin, Cali, Cartagena. Well, Cartagena, obviously, it's today. But Bogota, Medellin, Cali. How do the participants differ in the style, in the personalities and so on? I'd be fascinated because, again, these are 3 different cities that could be 3 different countries, but under the same flag. I'd be really interested to know about the differences.
Well, replicating this event is different to perhaps, if you had like a franchise business or a hamburger chain or something that you can just basically, it's the same wherever you go and you just use the same sort of parameters and everything like that. But this is very different because there's cultural differences in each of those places. And I think Colombia has been great because it's prepared us to go out to the big wide world as well, because they're exactly as you say, like there's such a huge cultural difference between paisas and rolos and costeños, that every time we open one, we have to adapt the event to suit the public. And Medellin was really interesting because the first event when we launched in 2021, we launched it, and I was at the first event, and I'd normally take basic English because I speak Spanish. So when we do a basic table, the idea is have a bilingual facilitator. And so we don't get teachers or anything like that. We just try and Shanghai people who can already speak the language that is the target language, and we give them a few free beers so that they hang around and help us out. But I always took the basic English because I had the ability to speak to the customers in Spanish, and it's obviously really complicated if you've got somebody who doesn't speak any English trying to speak to a gringo who doesn't speak any Spanish. It's a very short conversation. So we'd always try and get bilingual facilitators in the basic group. So I was sitting in basic English and nobody came over. And then I saw all these other groups that had started up, and I went and asked one of the coordinators, I'm like, what's going on with the groups? And they're like, can you help us? Can you sit in one of these groups? And they were all foreigners, and they were all wanting to speak Spanish. So we went from Bogota is 70% locals at the language exchange, 70 to 80% local people that want to speak other languages. And in Medellin, this automatic phenomenon happened where we had so many foreigners in the city at the time when we opened that there was a huge demand for Spanish all of a sudden, and just for people to practice Spanish. So I ended up taking a Spanish group. I think the way that the event developed is probably 50-50 in Medellin, 50% foreigners, 50% locals. And so the mix of customers is very different, and the way that the event is and the type of music that we have to play, like there's all of those considerations that you have to think about when you're saying, okay, well, who's the public that's coming to this thing? And I think Cartagena is going to be really interesting because it's a tourist town, and I think we're going to have that again where we have probably a higher percentage of foreigners. But I think also, the people in Cartagena are really excited about this because they understand the benefit of a cultural event like this, and they know that giving tourists a good experience in Cartagena is really important to their economy. And one of the things I noticed, because we're doing this at the moment, going around and meeting all of the people that are going to work with us and bring people to the event, and foreigners don't get an automatic in Cartagena because their interactions with locals are basically just people trying to sell them stuff. Like you walk down the street and it's like, do you want to do a tour? Here's a restaurant, everybody's trying to sell them something, and the foreigners automatically kind of like, no thanks. And they're very sort of isolated to a degree because there's this kind of pressure from local people. And so I think the really exciting thing in Cartagena is just to give foreigners a different experience of the city where they can actually meet local people in a social atmosphere that's not as I suppose aggressive. I think the local people really are looking forward to that as well. There's just normal day-to-day interactions with foreigners,
not entirely commercial as it would be in that respect. Before I get onto another thing, how does that? I think because you mentioned the difference in music. What is the difference in the music between Bogota, Medellin, and Cali then?
It's fascinating. Like, we have to offer different types of music. So one of the great things when we moved to Vintrash is that we've got in Bogota, we've got 3 different dance floors. And so it just gave us this like open book. It's like, oh, finally we can, because people would always be asking us for specific music. Like, you'd be in La Villa and they'd be like, oh, can you put house music on? That's my favorite music. It's like, no, we cannot. Because half the people here, the Colombians will all leave. The way that we do it in Bogota is we have what we call Latin, which is our main room, and that's where we do mostly like reggaeton, dancehall, stuff that people can dance to, the very typical sort of nightclub night out in Colombia. And then we have a smaller one we call Global Beats, which Tiffany invented that name. And it's more sort of disco and hits from like something you hear in a nightclub in Europe, for example. Probably things from our generation as well, a lot of classic stuff and things like that. And then we've got an upstairs terrace where we do electronic music because we do have a natural demand for that from foreigners that just like that type of music. So when we went to Cali, for example, we found this amazing phenomenon. I lived there for a while as well. It was really interesting where a lot of the foreigners were there specifically to learn how to dance salsa. Like that was their thing. And they would go out on a night out, not a bender, like not a, let's go out and tear it up and have a bunch of drinks and stuff. They'd go to a place that plays salsa music. And it was about practicing what they'd learned at their salsa school during the day. And it was so similar to what we do at Gringo Tuesdays. like, people doing formal language lessons would come to Gringo Tuesdays to practice the language and, live in person with a foreigner. And then it was kind of the same concept. So we started this thing called Baile Social, which was just basically to have, a space where foreigners could come and practice the salsa that they were learning at their salsa school, and with locals, and we'd round up a bunch of really good dancers, which isn't hard in Cali. Just amazing dancers on every street corner. So basically, we had a part of the event was completely different to the other events, where we had to create it for the demand that was in Cali, or the different, I suppose, aspect of what people wanted to do when they were there.
Yeah.
And Cartagena, we're adding in sort of champeta. We've got the venue that we have, Casa Cruzada, is amazing. It's got another kind of bar in it. It's called Basurto Social Club, which they kind of picked up after the pandemic. Yeah, it was in Basurto. It was near there. It was in Getsemani.
Yeah, at the end of the
and it's now part of Casa Cruzada.
But then it's moved.
Yeah.
All right, Casa Cruzada.
Yeah, so it's in Casa Cruzada.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Casa Cruzada now. It's like it's a separate entity in one aspect. Like, they've put it in a part of the bar by itself. But we're going to do like champeta lessons for the foreigners that go there, and then that we're going to keep that very Cartagenero.
Should be too.
So the whole concept of that room will be like, this is the local experience. And then we've got an upstairs which will be full reggaeton and hits, and then another terrace which we have for the electronic music, which is exceedingly popular in Cartagena, as I've found out as well. So yeah, like, each city has its own thing, and you've got to kind of work out, right, what's the mix here? What are people going to want? So we're taking a punt in Cartagena. We'll find out soon.
But I think you're opening again today. It's a good thing. We're about to get into high season, and Cartagena, despite there having been a significant lapse in tourism this year, significant, and I know that Cartagena has suffered immensely. You just think of us in Mccoll, if Cartagena suffers, but I can see that working, definitely. I can see it. I can see it also maybe needing to be like more. I don't know, because there's always a flow of people in Cartagena, so potentially there's success.
There's temporadas. Like, it's really busy or it's dead. And the beauty of Gringo Tuesdays is that it sort of survives based on
locals,
like having presence on a night that's normally nothing else on. So what tends to happen is it gets a reputation where people are like, oh, that's the place to go. It could actually be okay during the low season, because there's still a bunch of local people that will hopefully be our customers, which we're working really hard to make that happen. And then, you've got there's always going to be tourists. There's always people passing through. And as long as the way that we've set up the funnels where people come to the event, they find out about it, then you end up with this reputation that people are like, oh, that's the place to go on a Tuesday night. And, we've had that in Bogota, where we buck the trend. Like, we're really busy in December. Whereas other nightclubs are in strife.
I am less than interested in seeing European, North American, there will be exceptions to the rule, of course, anyone twerking in Cartagena. Let me just get that out there.
There's fantastic, like, it's a great mix of cultures. Like, we had, for the first time when we were in Medellin, we had African Americans. Like, it was it's fascinating, because it wasn't a group of people that generally travelled in Bogota anyway. Really didn't see.
There's a big community coming.
It's happening in Cartagena.
I'm seeing. Oh, really cool.
And they can actually dance.
Well, I believe that.
They're representing foreigners, man.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so good one there. So I've got more questions on this one, because I think Cartagena will be a success. You've done everything. You mentioned a few times around as you Shanghai people, so you strong arm people into doing everything. How many people have you had to blackball for their behavior?
For their behavior in the party?
Yeah.
A lot.
A numerous amount, I can think.
Yeah. I think the nightclub industry, anywhere in the world, you get to see, a lot of stuff. So, we've experienced it all. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that challenges with that type of event where, yeah, absolutely, we get people that are intoxicated when they arrive.
God.
They've come from the Irish pub and the tea, and they've had one too many pints of Guinness, and then they arrive at Gringo Tuesdays, and we obviously have to. The most important thing, we have like twice the amount of security staff that a normal night has.
Yeah, sure.
Just because we understand the 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 devastating effect that it would have if we have security issues with foreigners.
Yeah.
Not only on our business, but
Yeah.
I think as a reputational thing for Colombia, it's really bad. And so, we take that part really seriously, but also filtering out the undesirables is something really tricky, because I'm a very casual kind of dude, and I don't, I really like to have an inclusive event that, anybody can come to. But we have to be careful with prostitution, and we have to be careful with drug use and all of these sorts of things. And I mean, that's part and parcel of the industry, and it doesn't matter if you must know yourself in hostels and things like that, or at least in accommodation. And people, when they're on holidays, they do things that perhaps they wouldn't do if they're in their own backyard. So, it's one of those things. It's just a control thing that we've learned how to do.
You segued into my next point as well about security, because I mean, sure. Medellin, obviously, big news about the security. A lot of foreigners. I think it's around 30 have died this year, but that's some of just like heart attacks and normal stuff. But of course, there's the link to organized crime, prostitution, and dating apps. I wonder how you deal with that in Medellin, and then in Cartagena, the huge prostitution industry, which is visible to the naked eye and to the the unpracticed, let's say. You see it straight away in Cartagena, or I guess in Medellin and Provenza and in Poblado. How are you dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge, because I mean, the other thing is too that it got a lot of bad press.
Well, bad press sells. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's one of those things that really affects the tourism industry, and rightfully so. Like, I mean, there are a lot of places that are less than safe in parts of Colombia, especially for people who perhaps are participating in things that they shouldn't be, or looking for things that they shouldn't be. I mean, we've always been really conscious, because of the cultural aspect of what we do, and also the educational aspect of trying to filter out those types of people. We used to have like heaps of trouble in Bogota, because we had a bunch of girls that were ladies of the night, and they would they'd start sending lists of names through to our reservations on on Facebook and stuff, and we'd have just a list of girls. It's very hard to accuse somebody of being a prostitute when they show up at your door. But we would have situations where the girls would, in Bogota in particular, have big coat on, so it was hard to see what was underneath, and then maybe get into the bar and reveal.
No way.
So I think we started to identify the people, and it's interesting. Some of the girls will attach themselves to somebody beforehand, so they'll arrive with somebody, and we'll often say, "Look, she's not allowed in," or whatever. But it's really about having a quality team of people, and my wife is amazing at identifying these types of things as well. So she's very experienced and runs the operations for the company. And it's one of those things. It's not foolproof, but we do take it very seriously, because we're aware of the potential danger for our customers, but also the reputation of not only us but the country.
Yeah, you're going to have to. I mean, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, and I like that you are thinking not just of Gringo Tuesdays, but again, the reputation of Colombia. It's the hardest sell we have. Those of us in the service industry is the reputation of Colombia. And I would say almost every other day I'm speaking to someone, or parents of someone in England, who have somehow got my details through someone and saying, "Oh, we're very worried about this and that." It's like, you have your wits about you, you behave appropriately, and you'd have to be really, really unlucky to get caught up in something. And so it's like, don't do what you wouldn't do at home. But of course, it's impossible to say that to people who are on holiday, because as part of holiday is cutting loose.
Well, the adventure of travel, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
I think it's fascinating. As I started out Casa Maria as a backpacker place, and then evolved into mid range. I would say upper mid range for Casa Maria, and then we opened the next one as top range. And I watched the evolution of the backpacker market and the travel market. And you must have seen this as well over the years. And post COVID,
Yeah.
things changed immensely. And have people's expectations and demands changed post COVID in your industry?
Um, I think there's an interesting phenomena this West, like
Mm,
after the pandemic, where it really just took off again.
yeah,
And I think everybody thought that was the new normal,
yeah,
and so they just opened so many new bars and restaurants and gastro bars and all these sorts of things, and there was just an oversupply
mm,
at some point because everybody just wanted to jump on the bandwagon, and it's totally understandable because after a pandemic where a lot of people went through a difficult period, they've seen this opportunity.
mm,
So yeah, it all moves in cycles. Like
yeah,
we've seen the full cycle now. Because we've been here for long enough.
yeah,
But yeah, as you say, at the moment, like tourism's way down.
yeah,
It's a but I've seen it before, and I know it'll come back. So
yeah,
usually, what happens is a clean out of the bottom 30%, who aren't doing the things the right way, or potentially they're just not competitive. And then and like all of these Airbnbs, the whole Airbnb phenomenon was really interesting too because
yeah,
there was so many that just came onto the market. Medellin went bananas.
yeah,
Like even I nearly got sucked in. I was like, oh, I'm going to buy a short-term furnished rental because this enormous return on investment for these types of things because people are just paying way more than it's worth.
mm,
But as with anything, that works via capitalism or economics, eventually these things are gonna
yeah,
they're gonna change. The cycle changes, and all of a sudden, people are potentially stuck with these apartments that they've been charging enormous amounts of money for. That now people are going, you know what? I don't. This is there's another place, and then they get competitive, and everybody drops their prices, and all of a sudden,
yeah.
things just even out again. But yeah, the market itself, I mean, has softened this year, but I feel like it's just part of the cycle, and then we'll see an upturn again when things reach relative normality.
It's a global thing at the moment. I've got friends working
Yeah.
in France and the UK in this industry as well and stuff. It's not just here. But obviously it affects us here. We live here, and also the informal market in employment. So therefore, people are more directly affected. That the Airbnb question is so fascinating because I see that in a slight decline now as well, especially with
Yep.
the what would you say, the backlash, especially in Medellin. There's that one guy who's got 350 apartments he manages and stuff. But then it's obviously I'm not going to say that directly related to some of the nefarious stuff in Medellin, but it is all grouped together. And I know in
Yeah.
Mccoll, for example, a whole bunch of people have thrown up Airbnbs, and I'm watching the spiral in their prices and so on, and bringing it down,
Yep.
bringing it down. But then you don't have the clientele that you want, and you're entering a different market, and that about the 30% at the bottom, of the bars were being cleared out. We've seen that through COVID and post-COVID, and even now, all those people who just threw beds in a place and thought that they could
Yep.
because of course post-COVID in the immediate aftermath, when Colombia and the world, well, Colombia, let's start with immediately, which were just desperate to get out of their houses and travel. I mean, everybody had a boom. And I mean, it was better than
Yep.
pre-COVID for us in
Yeah.
the hotel industry. But then, of course, that has now measured out, and everyone thought, oh yeah, hotel, 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 bar, bar, bar. But now we're watching that out again. So it is fascinating to watch these things. Well, we're closing up now, Travis, and I know you've got an incredibly busy evening ahead with Gringo Tuesdays there in Cartagena. I know that you did open in Panama, but that was a different story. But you do have a success story in Lima, in Miraflores. How, again,
Yep.
culturally, difference between Colombia and Peru, Lima and Bogota, two capitals, it's got to be massive.
It's really interesting because I don't know. I don't know if it's me, but sometimes I just assume that people are the same, and yeah, they just have different ways of interacting. And in Lima, the challenge for us was that the locals, the Limeños, the Peruvians, don't have that natural sort of exuberance that the Colombians have.
Yeah.
And for them to start a conversation with somebody who they don't know is actually a challenge.
Yeah.
And so getting the language exchange happening, and also managing something offsite. Now that we've built a bigger company, now I can't be everywhere, and we're doing 5 events at the same time.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
And so all the problems that you have in one event, where you're getting messages from one event saying, okay, we've got a problem with this customer, or this person has a reservation, but they it wasn't registered on the system, blah 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 blah, all of this stuff. Or we've got an alliance partner, a hotel business that sent us a bunch of customers, and there's too many people in the queue, and they're waiting for too long, and all of these sorts of things. You get that like multiplied by 5 now. So we really had to learn how to build the business out so that we can support our offsite businesses. And another country is another country. So it's, even though I thought, Latin America, that's the same, it'll be the same. You've got to start a business there, and you've got to formalize everything from a tax perspective, and the way that we do business with the bar, the payments that we receive from the bar, we have to change all of that stuff. There's a whole heap of things that are teaching us as we go. Like I think these are good lessons for us as we expand. But Lima's been really well received, and now it's the thing to do in Lima on Tuesday night. So we've got that reputation now. We just got to watch the curve and see that it keeps going in the right direction. But the venue's fantastic. Friends of mine, a guy I used to play cricket with, Mccoll, from an Irish guy that was in the Peruvian cricket team, and he talked to me for years about Gringo Tuesdays and bringing it to Peru. So we had a really fantastic relationship from day one with the bar. It's owned by a group of Irishmen down there, and Irishmen and Australians get along very well.
Yeah.
Naturally, we all like similar things.
It's a combined hatred of the English.
Well, mate, I wasn't going to say it. Like,
I can
I'm on
say
your
it. I can
podcast, so I
say
want to
it.
be polite. But you can say it. But we always want to beat them at everything.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I think we've just had a really good experience down there in terms of starting a new business in another country, where we had the support of a local business owner that was able to give us some guidance. I think every time it's an adventure, every time we've got to change things up. We're doing the salsa class down there as well, and that works really well. So every time we open a new event, it's a discovery process where we kind of go, okay, well, what do we do for this market, and how do we change it so that people like it down here or there or whatever. So I think we're firmly set on going to the States next year, and
really?
Brazil, and
the States.
Yeah,
what?
so we've. Well, the first one's probably going to be in Miami, which is a little bit of a cliche, but we already have like really strong connections there. But I have a venue in New York that's interested as well. I think that's our next stage of growth, is to look at how we move into different cultures and see how it works in different places.
So Miami, and in Brazil, where?
We're probably starting Sao Paulo.
I think that's a good place to do it.
It's an amazing city for it. I mean, we went to Rio, but Rio's kind of the Medellin of, or the Cartagena, if you like, of Brazil. So it's more a tourist market, a bit different. So like the capital city markets are very different to the tourist markets. It's a totally different event, but it's really cool because it is exciting to start a new business, and it really is a new business. It's not just opening the same thing that we do in other places, but the experience behind it, the whole concept of trying to get people to interact with locals, is what we want to replicate in each location. So that whole feeling of okay, I've had an authentic experience. I got to meet people that are from the city and talk to them about their culture, is what we want to replicate in the other cities.
I think this is such an amazing good news story, and surviving COVID and coming out the other side and everything. But one final comment, and it's only just come out because of your expansion program, is that what and who and who are locals in Miami? This is my who are, when you're talking about interactive.
It's a great question.
Yeah, who are the locals? You're going to have to get into this philosophically.
Well, it is really tricky because, I think there's that, and also we've talked about the name as well. Is that it may not travel because gringo might mean something different in the States. So the thing is, in Miami, I think obviously there's that amazing Latin culture below the surface, and obviously, as you say, like defining who's a local in Miami is probably pretty difficult. I think the thing is, we want people that live in Miami to be an integral part of the event, and creating a community of language learners is really the foundation of the event. Like the party and everything like that kind of happens because of the rest of it. Like if you don't have a language exchange, then you're just another nightclub open on a Tuesday, and people are like, well, why would I go? They've got a DJ, I can go anywhere and they've got the same stuff. And so the fact that we have the language exchange and we create that community really gives us the license to create it as a destination for a party. And so, really for us, when we talk about locals, we talk about people that live in the city, mixing with people that don't live in the city. So, their nationality or their mother tongue as such, or their native language is not necessarily, what we mean by local and foreign.
That's so cool. What a great story, Travis. And thank you for sharing it with us. And of course, some of the more sensitive aspects of security. 12th of November, today, launch in Cartagena. The club is called Casa Cruzada. It's right in Santo Domingo, right in the center, in the heart. If you're staying in Getsemani, you're staying in the center, you're staying anywhere. It's walking distance. You don't have to take transport. You're not held at the mercy of a Transmilenio. I wish you all the best. I think it's going to be great. I hope that the cyclone in the Caribbean isn't dumping too much rain on you, which could, keep people away.
Sunny today.
Okay, so far so good. So far so good. This is an amazing phenomenon, and I am so happy. I love to be able to talk about success stories, and that you are expanding to Miami and Sao Paulo perhaps in 2025. I shouldn't say perhaps. It's going to happen. You guys have the know-how and the team. Congratulations. And obviously, they've got a huge marketing team. If you're old like me, Facebook. If you don't hate Elon Musk, I'm sure they're on Twitter or X. I'm sure you're all over Instagram, which seems to be quite universal. Look it up, Gringo Tuesdays, and I guess with a / or Lima or Bogota or Medellin or Cali or on it goes. Congratulations, Travis.
That's it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You should be immensely proud of yourselves.
Well, thank you, Richard, and amazing that we haven't had this conversation for the first 13 years of the event, but you're still going as well. And I think the podcast has been fantastic for the community of foreigners and expats in Colombia. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to have a chat.
You're most welcome. It's it's taken us 544 episodes. Last time I spoke to Gringo Tuesdays was episode 10. Quite a different prospect back then, but I guess it keeps me sane somewhat. I think we're all a bit quirky, those of us who've been out here a long time and doing, businesses, I think, long-term businesses and so on. So again, my hat is off to Travis Crockett, Alex Owen, Tiffany, the team of Gringo Tuesdays, of course, your wife, who is key in it. We'll be back. We'll be back next week with another episode of all Colombia-related content. If you would like to support us, that's Colombia. It's www.patreon.com/Colombia Calling. Go to Gringo Tuesdays. Those of you who are in Colombia or going to Peru, Lima, and then keep an eye out for next year, Miami and Sao Paulo. How exciting is that? This has been episode 544. I've been Richard Mccoll talking to Travis Crockett. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you and goodbye.